Amy Cooper, citizen. They created for themselves sort of a kingdom, every man a king, but they created for themselves sort of a kingdom, every man a king, but the subjects are they created for themselves sort of a kingdom, every man a king, but they created for themselves sort of a kingdom, every man a king, but the subjects are black people, black and brown people and indigenous people. Yeah. The rest of us are subjects. And that is whether or not it's Amy Cooper versus Christian Cooper. Amy Cooper, citizen. Christian Cooper, subject. So that she feels she has this inherent power to make him tell her, for her to, she has to decide what he can do. He can't have his own decisions. She makes those decisions. She can use the police to enforce her rule over him. And in this subject of Mr. Floyd, he was not treated as a citizen. You wonder if, there had been a white person and there had been a 911 call that they passed a $20 bill, would that person be dead? Likely not.
I keep saying, and I'll say again, the people down here on the planet don't want to integrate. And that's the very thing that the Bible tells society to do. Let the wheat grow with the tares until time of harvest. The wheat representing the Christian people, the tares representing the Antichrist people. Let them grow together until time of harvest. They don't want to integrate. And because they don't want to integrate, we're seeing episodes after episode after episode after episode, again and again and again, regardless whether it be some monster that decides to want to get a freaking AK-47 or assault rifle or get something with a boot stock on it and go out here and try to make a social statement by killing a bunch of people, or having what we're having right now, which is basically culture war. This is a culture war between a group of people that obviously don't want to get together. And the Bible says that if you can't love him who you can see, how are you going to be able to love him who you cannot see, which is God Almighty? You got to have love in your heart. And you got to be willing to integrate. Live with one another. Come to an agreement. That's what the Word of God is all about. It's not about fighting and feuding. It's about getting along, being prosperous, growing, pulling as a team, becoming as one. That's the reason why God destroyed various cultures and various generations, was because they was getting so far out of hand that's whenever God had to come in and intervene and say enough is enough. Once more, it is Satan who has blinded the eyes of humanity, and it is because of the sinful nature of man that is causing these episodes. And I'm going to use the word episode just like you would if you was watching some sort of a click on TV that come on every afternoon. Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3. That's how you got to look at it. These are all episodes. And as we are becoming calloused to the episodes, we're also seeing more harshness that's happening to the innocent. Please listen to this. This is sickening. It is sad that we in the 21st century, in 2020, the year of the Jubilee, still have not learned to come together and pull as a society. And yes, as far as I'm concerned, all 4 of those men should be charged with murder. They should be charged with murder before they have an opportunity of laying their head down. Because one was just as guilty as the other towards sitting there watching one do what he was doing while the victim was screaming and hollering, I'm out of air. I can't get no air. I can't get no air. It's horrible that we as a society have taken one step forward and I guess 15's back, pertaining to this civil culture war that we're still at one another's arms about. And it's simply because people don't want to integrate. People don't want to give up their little piece of space so that we can all get along. And it falls right down to the old saying that there's entirely too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You know, whenever it gets to the point that we can no longer function as a society, that's whenever God steps in and He destroys that society. He allows for that society to come to naught, either through a pandemic, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanoes, a big meteor coming out of the sky, solar flares. There's thousands and thousands of things, from locusts to diseases to war, that can break out that will stop this type of insanity. And that's exactly what it is. It's insanity. So please, as you listen to this, gauge this on your own level of why can't humanity learn to do as God requested. Not suggested, but requested. There's a difference in somebody suggesting something versus requesting something. Whenever He said, let the wheat grow with the tares until time of harvest, He's not making a recommendation. It's actually a commandment. Let the wheat grow with the tares until time of harvest.
Right? If the police had showed up on Mr. Cooper, he would probably, be in great risk. We'll just put it that way. And we've just seen this over and over and over again, whether it's Trayvon Martin, whether it's Ahmaud Arbery, where regular people say, I can act as the police. I can pursue you. I can chase you, even if you're a kid. And then I can say you're the one who's dangerous. And I can say I have a right to kill you and just do it. And just do whatever I want to you. The Breonna Taylor situation, where you can be in your bed. You are a subject, not a citizen. And that is how Black people feel right now, that we are being treated as subjects and not as citizens. And it's the same thing with these armed white men who can get...
That's the way the Christian society feels. Black or white. We feel like that we are a subject, something that needs to be studied, possibly put into a cage, and poked at, and snarled at, and laughed at. That's the way the Christian society feels like. We have been victimized, dehumanized, and demonized to the degree that we are now suffering the consequences on account of this.
Armed up and walk into a state capitol, and that's okay, and the police are benign. They don't even act afraid. But let Black people show up and protest the death of an innocent Black man, and suddenly, we need tear gas. We got to go full force.
Yeah, the subject-citizen line is so perfectly apt in this case, and particularly in those the images we have seen of police in the face of these protesters, where the relationship there is like constituent or citizen, or, okay, well, I'm here to make sure nothing goes down, to make sure your constitutional right to bear arms and protest are protected. That's my sort of sovereign duty here. And that's just not the way. I mean, in Baltimore and in Ferguson and last night in Minneapolis and every other protest that I've ever covered against police violence, it does not go down like that.
At all. I mean, Charlottesville, the same thing. The police were there to protect the people who were marching as neo-Nazis, not to protect the Black people who were being victimized by those neo-Nazis. This plays out over and over and over again, that Black people's right to protest is secondary to white people's right to be an armed protest with long guns, terrifying looking war weapons. That's fine. The police are there to protect their civil rights. But for Black people, it is simply subjugation. It is simply, we're there to control you. We're there to minimize your movement, to minimize your opportunity to protest, because you simply are a subject in this country. That is something that's never been fixed. 400 some odd years later, we have not fixed it. And I have to say, even ordinary white citizens who are consider themselves good people, don't consider themselves racist people, there is still way too often that same attitude that if I see you in my building, I have the right to say, why are you here?
Yep.
Do you belong here? Do you want to show me some identification? You have to, or I'm going to use my power of this. I'm going to call 911 and enforce my power over you. And that is just ordinary people in Central Park. That is what is so scary about this country.
And that's the exact same thing that happened to me day before yesterday, whenever I made a telephone call to an individual for the first time since I've been back here now for 7 years, going on 7 years. The first thing that individual wanted to do was dial 911 so that he could force his power over me. And the thing about it is, you're not supposed to dial 911 unless it is an absolute emergency. And with me talking to an individual on the phone, not threatening him in any form or fashion, for him to dial 911 is the same thing that you're talking about, little sister, as far as being stignified in a way that I'm the subject. I'm not an equal to him. He thinks that he can dominate and overpower me by bringing fear and intimidation into my life because he's going to contact the popo. What's more, they all know that I'm a Christian. I've been supporting Christianity around here now for 30-something years. Been a born-again Christian since 1976 or 1973. Got baptized up at First Baptist Church by Brother Eaton. Gave my heart and life to Christ. But yet, no, they're stignifying me. They're wanting to bring out the worst in me. And I understand exactly what the little sister here is trying to say, that whenever there's a flare-up, in which I don't know how bad the flare-up was, it may have been necessary to bring in tear gas and rubber bullets and water cannons. I don't know. I didn't see all of it. I've only seen bits and pieces of it.
And all of this, I mean, this is one way in which state force...
But I understand what she's saying. I understand clearly what she's saying, and it does happen by and large with the black race. But you also need to look at something else while you're looking. The black race in the prison system has more of a tendency towards becoming violent than the white race, or the red race, or the yellow race. So maybe that could be the reason why the cops all of a sudden put up a red flag whenever something like this has occurred pertaining to an innocent black man being killed. But I've never showed any violence in my case, other than trying to harm myself.
Cuts along these lines, but one of the things we've seen in the pandemic is that all kinds of institutions have cut along these lines. I mean, whether it's the way that people in rental housing are being treated, whether it's the actual health disparities. You have a special this weekend specifically looking at that, right? About the ways in which those disparities have been thrown open in the midst of the pandemic.
Well, here's what's so ironic. And by the way, I'll throw in one more thing, which is that these white protesters who say, you don't have the right to tell me that I have to wear a mask or that I can't be out at the beach. I have the right to, I'm a citizen, right? So it even plays in with COVID. You can't police me. I police you.
Right.
But on the subject of poverty, here's what's so ironic. For white people, for white citizens, they actually aren't doing all that much better economically. The average person who is poor is white, not black. It is rural, poor white people who are in the exact same position as poor African Americans, as poor indigenous people, as people who are in those meatpacking plants. We show poverty for what it is. What we want to do, what Bishop William Barber, this was his great idea, was to open up poverty and low wealth and show that the 40 million some odd Americans who are low wealth are not just black people. It's not just black people. It's black people, brown people, indigenous people, and people in this country are really struggling. So you have a lot of white Americans, quite frankly, who are fighting for people who are so far ahead of them economically, who are dragging them along the same way they're dragging people who look like me along. That's the irony of the whole thing.
And you got the Wall Street Journal and the president's economic advisor saying, don't worry, a capital gains tax holiday is coming amidst all this, which is just like too perfect to put on top of all of it. Joy Reid, it's great to talk to you. I've missed you, and I'm going to watch your special. It's American Crisis, Poverty and the Pandemic. It airs this Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on MSNBC. It's going to be great. Thank you, Joy.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Chris.
Still to come, does Joe Biden have the most progressive platform of any Democratic presidential nominee in recent memory? Minimum wage to immigration, Vox's Matt Iglesias is here to make the case on Biden's agenda ahead.
Facts and Fears, Thursday on CNN.
He's back with us. He's Art Del Cueto. Art, we're seeing the imagery of shootouts taking place just south of the U.S. border. From the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge and more. What's your take on what's going on there? What's happening?
Well, honestly, Liz, first off, thank you for having me on. But these criminals, they don't care what else is going on. They play by different rules, obviously. And it's just as violent as it always has been. It's been nonstop. And unfortunately, we see some of that violence, potentially coming across into the United States. Just about a month ago, there was a breach from some of the Mexican authorities into the United States. That's something that, I don't think has been reported or has been talked about, I should say. And at the same time, the men and women that are out there protecting our nation's borders, they're arresting criminals in the United States, individuals that are smuggling drugs or smuggling humans into the country, and they're having a hard time with our own authorities prosecuting them. So that's something I think that the DOJ has to look into also. And I've talked to a lot of the agents, and some of these stories are as simple as catching individuals with various people in the trunk that they're smuggling into the U.S.
Tonight from Minneapolis. They're from our Fox Station's helicopter. They show looting happening as we speak. Riders are using the sad death of a man in police custody, as a pretext to pillage businesses that have nothing to do with any of it in downtown Minneapolis. A few moments ago, local Fox Minneapolis took some disturbing footage from another vantage point of the looting. The reporter had to clear that specific area. That reporter is Karen Scullin, and she joins us tonight by phone. Karen, thanks so much for joining us. What are you seeing in Minneapolis right now?
Well, I can tell you, so I was just a few short steps away covering the protests which have been going on all day.
Now, see, this is wrong. This is way wrong.
Something about looting, so I started walking towards the Target store, which had been closed.
I didn't know this was going on. This is wrong, way wrong.
And there were people just carrying out television. They were stacking them on top of their cars. There were huge TVs on top of cars, diapers, clothes, movies, cameras, you name it. It was coming out.
They need to gather them all up. They need to go to jail.
Kind of a window by the front door. And then I guess they unlocked the door and everybody rolled in. And if you would look inside the store, it literally looked like people were simply shopping. And then they would come out with carts full of goods from inside the store like it was no big deal. This went on for a very long time. No police anywhere. Probably about, I'd say, 40 minutes into it. I've been tweeting about it. A couple of deputies rolled up, pumped their horses, left. And that was it. And so then the looting continued. And I've really not seen anything like it around here, at least in Minneapolis.
Were they shouting political slogans or saying they wanted answers, or did they just want TVs?
They just want to steal. No, I mean, it appears that they just were stealing. There were no political anything going on there at the party. Now, just a short step away at the 3rd precinct, yes, there was
total chaos
of chants and shouting, and police were continuing to...
Now, in incidences like this, they deserve to be marshaled. They have brought the marshaling into their lives by acting like cold-blooded savages, heathens. This is where the military, National Guard, steps in. This is where the water cannons and the rubber bullets and the tear gas steps in. Same things going on in other parts of the country, all over the world. Society's gone nuts in thinking that it can go in and ravage and do what they're doing here. That is totally wrong.
Fire rubber bullets and tear gas on that side of things. So it's sort of two separate things going on at the same time.
Amazing video. Stay safe. Karen, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. We last talked to our Mike Tobin. He was having trouble breathing. He got hit with some kind of CS gas. We want to check back in with him and see how he's doing. Hey, Mike.
Well, taking you for a look around the area, you talk about looting. This barricade that they've erected in the middle of the street is primarily made up of grocery carts from Target, garbage cans, whatever you have. So they're chanting off in the distance. There's a lot of people behind that barricade. Doesn't really seem to have much in the way of a strategic advantage. But there's the people chanting George Floyd right now. I can tell you that some of the people out in this crowd are armed. As we look over here at the police in some riot gear with the helmets, with the gas masks on. You can also see the 3rd precinct here, how broken up it is. You've got the door that's been boarded up. You've got the broken up windows, and that's our scene out here, Tucker.
Unbelievable. Stay safe. Mike Tobin in Minneapolis. Good to see you. It's the America they created. But at time, we'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, the great Sean Hannity takes over the 9 p.m. hour from New York.
All right, Tucker, thank you. And as you just heard from Tucker, breaking news tonight. Welcome to Hannity. We are monitoring these large protests in Minneapolis, and we have Mike Tobin on the ground there, and we're going to get to him in a few seconds here. Also have this video. The 4 police officers have now been fired, and as soon as we have Mike, we'll go to him. Apparently, we lost him for a second. These 4 officers have now been fired. I look at this videotape. There's nothing that I like when I see it. 8 minutes. And as a person that has now been trained in mixed martial arts for 7 straight years, this is what I do. Whenever you go for anybody's neck for any length period of time, it will be game over. That's a very dangerous spot. Could have to do with lack of training, abuse, obviously, and you can see from the crowd that people are reacting. And, so anyway, we're going to get to that in a second. Also tonight we have hard breaking news from the Department of Justice. That special investigative report just breaking. But first, Mike Tobin is on the ground with the very latest on the situation unfolding tonight in Minneapolis. Mike, what's going on?
Well, let me give you a look around, Sean. Right behind me is a makeshift barricade that the demonstrators have erected. It doesn't really seem to have a strategic anything. This is carts that came from the local Target that they've stacked up in the street with some other paraphernalia they got their hands on. They're chanting a lot of different things. George Floyd, the name of the individual who was killed here. Now we are at the 3rd precinct, and this is the precinct from which those police officers were dispatched. And that's our scene as we go on here. We're looking back at the police headquarters now. You can see that some of the glass is broken out at the 3rd precinct. You've got a lot of police officers at the ready right now. Some of what they have are launchers for the rubber bullets. You see some of the truncheons at the ready, tasers at their sides. There has been a lot of pepper spray deployed tonight. There have been some of the flashbangs deployed tonight. And usually the way it starts, there's a bit of a back and forth. You'll see a lot of the crowd out here, the usual chanting, and you'll see something come flying over the crowd. Plastic bottles, in some cases rocks, and then the police respond. And usually in that area where the flashbang hits or whatnot, you'll see the demonstrators scatter. That area will be vacant for a little while until they fill it in again. We have signs! And you hear some of the demonstrators saying right now, they have guns, we have signs. So that's our situation out here. Got a bunch of angry demonstrators. You saw that the 4 police officers, at least 4 police officers connected to the incident, were fired rather swiftly by the police chief. You saw the president saying that, well, here's one of the guys saying, they ought to be arrested. Clearly, that's not enough for these demonstrators. A lot of anger in the street. They're saying no justice, no peace. They want swift justice. And one of the people who's been very impatient about it has been the mayor of Minneapolis himself. Sean?
Yeah, Mike, have you spoken to the protesters specifically, like the guys behind you? I want to hear what they have to say.
All right, let me bring them in. You're saying no justice. What are you looking for here?
Arrest them. From what I understand, you murder someone, you get arrested for it.
You get arrested, and right. You even heard the mayor saying that he wants the county prosecutor to move up on that a little bit faster. On one of them, at least. You're talking about all four?
Yeah, all four. They're all four.
Now, what
the
about...
other three are at least accessories to the crime.
You're getting a lot from all the way up at the president, who said he says he's going to launch the DOJ and the FBI in this investigation. Why is that not enough? Why not pause and let the wheels of justice go?
Because this president hasn't told the truth about a damn thing, so why should I believe he's going to start doing it now?
Okay, what about your opinion?
I mean, they're just sitting there shooting tear gas at us, and all we're doing is holding signs.
Yeah, but not everyone is just holding signs. You've seen the rocks coming over the crowd.
No, I haven't seen the rocks today.
I saw them. And you see people pushing and shoving.
I haven't even seen you here today. I've been here.
I've been here the whole time, pal.
No.
All right, well, I'm not lying. Anyway, but so... To you, the wheels of justice just aren't moving fast enough, correct?
No, they're not moving at all. They're not moving at all.
Right.
This is not an isolated incident.
There's the argument. Well, take off your mask. Well, I don't want to tell you to take off a mask in a time like this. You want to be heard clearly?
Look, the thing is, in the United States of America, okay, like, the statute need to change. Because what the law says that if a police officer has reason to believe his life or her life is in danger, he or she can use deadly forces, therefore to be justified. Compared to other...
Why not just give it time instead of coming out to the streets like this?
No, because no. This police officer, listen, the evidence is there already. The evidence is there already. They should be arrested. Simple as that. And listen, this lawmaker need to change the law, okay? The United States has no...
You make a good point. This gentleman was coming in. The evidence is pretty clear. Unless there's something extenuating that we don't know about, what we all saw on that videotape was pretty evident.
Very clear.
And why not just let the authorities handle the case?
Are they handling it?
Well, they fired the police officers. This has made it all the way up to the president.
Hey, man.
We'll see.
Hey.
What would happen to me if I did that to you?
Yeah, that's...
Well, that's not the question.
I got 3 dudes here.
I'm asking you why not...
You want a fucking knee on your neck?
Watch your mouth. I'm happy to interview you, but let's keep it
Want a knee
clean.
on your neck? No, nobody does, dude. Nobody does.
Fair enough.
Why should he have to have it?
I don't think anybody...
Why should anybody worry about that? Let me give you an example, right? If I put my hand on somebody, I'm going straight to jail. But this cop, they can shoot somebody and they're not gonna hold accountable for it. Simple as that. You need simple law. If you shot somebody, you need to get hold accountable for it. But there's no such law in the book right now.
So, Sean, I think if I can summarize it, they don't trust the system. Clearly, they don't think it's operating fast enough, and they think if it was the average Joe would be locked up right now, Sean.
All right, Mike Tobin, thanks for being there. Stay right there. We're going to get back to you in a second. Here are the facts as we know them. George Floyd, 46-year-old African-American man, died on Monday. He was handcuffed. He was pinned to the ground by, look at this video here, by a police officer's knee in an incident that was recorded on video and obviously incited what is now the firings and now these protests calling for the arrest of the police officers. Now, the arrest of Mr. Floyd took place on Monday evening. The Minneapolis Police Department said in a statement that officers had responded to a call about a man suspected of forgery. President Trump has ordered both the FBI and the Department of Justice to investigate the death of George Floyd, the Minnesota African-American who died in police custody earlier this week and whose death has now sparked national outrage. Let me go back and re-rack this video. And my understanding is the total time on this is about 8 minutes, where the officer, now again, we're talking about potentially they suspected forgery in this case, not a violent crime. But if you look in particular at this video, this is what I don't like as somebody, again, I've been training in martial arts for 7 straight years. If, for example, somebody's carotid artery, you hit it hard enough right here, they will stumble and fall to the ground. It is a targeted area. There's a phrase of martial arts. It's called choking somebody out. If you put them in a chokehold, get these 2 areas, the 2 carotid arteries, they will be choked. For that length of time, it is impossible for somebody to survive that, as that is the most sensitive area of somebody's neck. Now, why it went on that long period of time, we don't know. We have some new video that we'll be getting to in a minute. By the way, quote, at my request, the president said, the FBI and Department of Justice are already well into investigation to this very sad, very tragic death in Minnesota of George Floyd. The president has tweeted, The 4 Minneapolis officers involved in the arrest were fired on, well, Tuesday, hours after a bystander's video showed an officer kneeling on the handcuffed man's neck, even after he pleaded that he could not breathe and stop moving. In a moment, the new video has just been released that we're going to get to. Matter of fact, we have it. All right, by the way, mate, let's go to this new video that was just released. Put it up full screen. There's obviously no talking here, but you can see more from a different angle. This is not, now what this video is showing is Mr. Floyd is not in any way resisting arrest. We're going to follow this through, watch it, mark it, and see where exactly it's going to. Now, what's happening here is, you know, I'm a big supporter of law enforcement. I am. Everybody knows that. I say 99.9% of officers, they are good people. They protect and they serve their communities. The officer has his hands on his pocket with a knee on his neck. The lack of training here is breathtaking. There's no evidence right here in this part of the tape prior to the neck incident, and we'll go back to that video in a second. This is not a violent crime we're talking about. We're talking about some suspected forgery of some kind. Now, the other officer, if you look at him, next to him was standing up and just looking around, and, you know, this new video has audio. If we can get that up and play this, because this has audio on it as well. But we'll pull that up in a second. Let's go back to the other video, and I want to take a look again. Now, this went on for 8 straight minutes. Again, what is the most serious, sensitive area, you know, of a person in terms of an arrest. From a martial arts standpoint, it is a targeted strike where one strike on the carotid artery could literally bring somebody, knock them right down to their knees, one shot. If you put somebody in a chokehold, it will, that's what they mean by the term choking out. We've heard the more drastic term, or you've seen it in the movies, it's called schlocking somebody out. That is where you would take the neck and literally of somebody and move it in 2 directions, and it does break their neck. It is one of the most single sensitive areas on the human body. For this period of time, how nobody saw it. Now, he's also, according to reports, saying that I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And it's critical, at this point, we've got to be asking. I don't see any movement, I don't see any resistance, I don't see why the person's not cuffed, why the knee stays on the neck. I'm trying to be as fair and objective. I don't rush to judgment on this program. I don't think anybody should. We believe in the presumption of innocence. But I can also say, looking at videotape doesn't lie. And putting somebody's knee on somebody's neck is extraordinarily hurtful and dangerous from somebody's neck point. Now, the guy has black gloves on, so they're not in his pocket. And you can hear some of the video in the background there, some of the bleeping out of things. And, you know, when he touches the car, you can see he has his gloves on. So the question is, once you get somebody in handcuffs, why would this go on for any extended period of time? So these are the facts as we know them. George Floyd, a 46-year-old African-American man, as you can see there, and this is not an edited tape. This is one long extended video. And on Monday, after being handcuffed, pinned to the ground, you know, this is what we have. Let's bring in Dan Bongino with us. Dan, you love law enforcement like I do. You served in...
I understand the reason why the people are upset. After seeing more of this, it upsets me. It really upsets me to sit there and watch another individual basically suffocate another individual in broad daylight with no more resistance than what's going on here and how this is going down. It's almost like a vigilante killing or something. Like the cops are doing more than just cops. They're basically turning themselves into the judge, the jury, and the executioner at the same time. And this is not what cops is supposed to do. They're supposed to restrain the individual and go from there. This is not restraining. This is choking. These people need to be charged for murder. Because any cop standing around him at that time should have identified the dangers. That, man, don't you need to let up? You're suffocating this guy to death. You're killing this guy. But none of them say nothing. They may call it involuntarily manslaughter, but the fact of the matter is it goes a little bit further than gross negligence, because they took a part in watching this and they could have stopped it and they chose not to. Accessory to the crime. It is so sickening.
The Secret Service. Yeah. You train in martial arts as I do. Tell us your experience, in terms of the neck, how sensitive the neck is, and how this can go on for this period of time. It makes no sense. No resistance that I see at all.
Yeah, Sean, this is it's really hard to watch. I've been tweeting about it for the past couple of days in conjunction with a couple other people here I work with at Fox as well. It's a tough video to watch. A couple of things about this. As you said before, there are two different types of chokes. One is almost exclusively banned in law enforcement. That would be a tracheal choke. When you cut off someone's trach, their windpipe, that's almost universally banned in law enforcement, really almost everywhere I know. What's happening here appears to be a carotid choke, which is a blood choke, which cuts off, as you said before, the carotid arteries, which restricts blood flow to the brain. It's very dangerous. I mean, after a long period of time, obviously restricting blood flow to the brain is going to result in potentially permanent damage, in this case, death. The problem I have here, Sean, is again, obviously, the full story matters, but the video tells a story that you...
We're basically watching a live execution in front of our very face. They are executing this guy. It wouldn't be no different if they took this man and took a noose and hung it around a tree and us watched them hang him openly in front of the cameras and in front of society. It wouldn't be no different. They're executing him publicly. A public execution.
Just can't run away from. When I was in the 7-5 precinct as a New York City Police Department officer, the golden rule was when the cuffs are on and the subject is controlled, the fight's over. That's it. And what I don't understand about this, and believe me, a lot of my law enforcement brothers I've been communicating with feel the same way, is I get it. Maybe there was it's a stressful job. We all understand that. But after a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, when the subject's contained and you have other officers on the scene, even though they're engaging in crowd control, it's clear this could turn into a potentially deadly situation with a blood choke lasting that long. And in this case, sadly, it did. I mean, this is really, really tough to watch.
Look, let me go back and give the details of this. I think the total time, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 8 minutes that this knee is on this guy's neck?
I think it was 6 minutes, but you may be right. I don't want to challenge you. You may be, but it was either way. It was
I've seen
well
both written. I don't want to get that fact wrong. The bottom line is, if you get on somebody's carotid, as I know, you and I have talked for hours and hours and hours about martial arts together, and your training as a Secret Service officer. I mean, one shot, a quick chop to shot at somebody's carotid, it will drop them to their knees if you hit the right spot. A choke out is done. You and I have actually done arm drags into chokeholds, and if you get both carotids, I could drop you in 15 seconds and you will be passed out. True or false?
Yeah, it's not, not even. You're actually, 15 seconds is, if you pinch off both carotids in a full either head and arm choke or an actual choke, it's not even 15 seconds. I encourage you to watch any kind of a jiu-jitsu competition and you can see that. I think in this case, the only reason this guy even survived Mr. Floyd here as long as he did, Sean, is because one side of his body's on the ground and only one side of his neck is. He wouldn't have even lasted. That's what's so disturbing about watching this, is he wouldn't have made it that long if his head wasn't on the concrete on the other side. I mean, that's what's so insane about watching this.
Hey, all right, stay right there. Don't leave Dan Bongino. We're going to bring in former NYPD Commissioner Bernie Kerrig, who knows a lot about tough situations. Arresting is also the head of prisons. And before we get to Bernie, you know, this is a Houston native. He grew up in the 3rd Ward, graduated Jack Yates High School, played football, moved to Minnesota. He worked there driving trucks. According to a friend of his, the difference between me is I had more opportunity than he did, wrote a good friend of his who won a championship with the San Antonio Spurs. But again, Bernie Kerrig, we're dealing with a, you know, in this case, a guy suspected of forgery, for crying out loud. And I'm looking at this. You're trained in the use of martial arts. You know how sensitive a neck area is. Why he's not resisting that we can see in this new video, which we're going to go to now. Why would they keep their foot on his neck for 6 minutes or more?
You know what, Sean? I don't think anybody has the answer because it defies logic. It defies common sense. It defies training. It defies arrest policies and procedures. There was no resistance. You know, I'm curious as to, they took him out of the car, they sat him down, then all of a sudden he winds up in this position with this guy's foot on his neck, his knee on his neck. Why? How did he get there? Why did he get there? Why did they keep his leg on his neck as long as he did? The guy's crying out that he can't breathe. You know, I am one, as you are, to give the men and women in law enforcement the benefit of the doubt. In this case, this is atrocious. This was an abusive use of force. It was a killing of someone that should not have died.
You know, you also are trained in martial arts too, and you and I, you know, it's my passion, so I talk about it with everybody about this. And you know, one of the things that we learn is about the neck and the neck area. But again, once somebody, I want to go to the second video now, and then we're going to go to the audio in the first video. In the second video, this new video, you can see that he's walking with the officers. I don't see any resistance in this new video that came out, Bernie. None whatsoever.
There is none.
There's none.
There's no resistance. But from the time they took him out of the car, there was no resistance. Then he winds up on the ground, and Dan is right. Had he not had his head in position in the way he was, he'd have been out in 9 seconds, 10 seconds. But to prolong it the way they did, the way he did, the cop.
No resistance here. No resistance.
No cop that I know understands why he did what he did.
All right, let's go to the original tape that we have been showing. As you can see, I don't see any resistance. This tape just came out. This is the tape. Listen to the audio here. It's faint.
Bro, with your feet on his neck, man, you get off the
His nose is bleeding. Like, come on. Y'all gotta hold him down.
Why would you do drugs, kids? It ain't about drugs, bro. You understand?
Y'all gotta put y'all in there. Right.
He is human, bro.
His nose is bleeding.
We can put him in the car. That's a y'all know that. I ain't said a word here, but I think.
Bernie Kerrig, as you watch that, we see in one tape, and again, this is not trial by videotape here. That has nothing to do with it. This guy's not resisting on any video we see. You hear him clearly saying, I can't breathe. I have to imagine, and I talked to my martial arts sensei, trains police officers for free. He says it is scary to him how, for most officers, a lot of officers, their only option is what's on their sidearm. That's it, or a stun gun. They're not trained in the use of martial arts, but even a rudimentary training would say, you would know how sensitive this is to one's neck.
It's murder.
Sean, this is
it's murder.
Your strange inheritance story.
Constituency groups with diseases, and he did it with HIV/AIDS, but it really is served subsequently as a
tape of what happened in Minneapolis. We haven't seen the body camera video, but now we need context because people say, well, we didn't see what happened before. And, you know, it's a little different from that one angle. How about somebody who saw with his own eyes? what the rest of us still can't believe. We watched for like an endless period, the needless agony of George Floyd. We have somebody who says they saw it, they talked to the officers, they got a feel for the officers' demeanor and recognition. That we need to hear. That's next.
Jim and Joanna.
15 years ago, I invented my pill. It took me 2 years to do.
The other officers, they're going to have to answer for that. And absolutely not, Sean. Listen, as you said, I oversaw the New Jersey State Police, oversaw FBI and DEA and ATF. I mean, these are great men and women who every day put their lives on the line to keep us safe. They're the exact opposite of what's going on in this video. They put themselves in harm's way to make sure that we're not. And this is not an example of that. And it's not only the person who's actually involved in the physical action that we see in choking this perpetrator, but worse, it's the people standing around who are not saying, hey, lay off now, we've got it, or just reach down and grab the guy off the ground themselves to be able to put him in the car, especially when you can hear so clearly on the video. If you can hear it clearly on the video, you know how clearly you can hear it in
screaming,
person.
I can't breathe.
Couldn't breathe.
He's got handcuffs on at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's just no excuse that I can see, Sean, and I'm like you. You know, I haven't been a part of law enforcement. I want to give law enforcement benefit of the doubt, but this isn't a benefit of the doubt situation of what I see. This is a clear wrong, and someone lost their life because of it.
All right, let's go to Mike Tobin. He's on the ground where these protests are breaking now. Breaking news in Minneapolis. Mike, let's get an update. You've been talking a lot to the people on the ground there. There's a lot of anger.
Yeah, Sean, I'm listening. Sorry, I'm a little tangled up in all the gear I've got going on here. There's a little bit of an ebb in the action at the moment, and that's kind of how it goes as they go back and forth with each other. You can see some of the demonstrators who are out on the street here, Minnehaha Avenue, and I believe this is Lake Street, and they're going back and forth with the police. The police will shoo them back some with some of the non-lethal weaponry, and then slowly but surely they start creeping forward. And that's what's going on right now. You see some of the chanting, the taunting, things of that nature, and you see the police kind of, in the riot gear, but I guess you could say relaxed posture. You can see how the building is broken up. The windows, anyway, are broken up. You can see the officers who are standing on top of the 3rd precinct, some of their non-lethal weaponry at the ready. I can describe some of the different weapons. You can see some of the tear gas launchers, you can see some of the flashbang launchers, and you can see some of the foam bullet launchers, all of which have been used tonight. I can see this gentleman over here has a pepper spray canister at the ready. And generally we see the pepper spray come out when someone gets up to this fence where Tomas is, Tomas the cameraman. If someone gets up a little too aggressively, that's when the pepper spray comes out. Mostly we see a lot of this, people holding the signs, taunting the police officers, and slowly but surely you'll see something come over the crowd. Most of it is a lot of this garbage you see here. Cans, plastic bottles. Every once in a while you'll see a rock come over the crowd, obviously something that could harm the police officers. Then you see the response, you see the flashbangs come out, you've seen the pepper spray come out, and this just goes back and forth throughout the night. You heard some of those demonstrators we talked with earlier. No one is disputing what was seen on that videotape. No one, including the mayor, who moved rather swiftly along with the police chief, or I should really say the police chief did it, to fire for the officers who were connected to that incident. Call for criminal prosecution, at least an investigation. But what you get from these demonstrators is that it's just not fast enough. They don't trust the people in the system. Sean?
Mike, stay on the ground. When we come back to you, you're going to talk to some of the people in that crowd with you in just a moment. First, our own
Range in here.
You pay nothing unless we recover money for the virus pandemic.
The only thing I would say to the protesters is the officers have been fired. We have a justice system. The president's ordered 2 investigations. You know, I don't think cops go to work every day wanting to kill people. As bad as everything that we see on video here is, we don't need confrontations with police. The police don't want the confrontations. As hard as it is sometimes, you know, we've got to, for the sake of a community, think of everybody and everybody's safety.
I can't.
Free,
That was Minneapolis earlier today. Protesters in that city gathered at the intersection where a man named George Floyd was pinned to the ground on Monday by a police officer who was seen kneeling on his neck. Mr. Floyd could be heard saying, "I can't breathe." He later died. By this afternoon, that intersection where Mr. Floyd died had transformed into a massive makeshift memorial for him with flowers and balloons placed right near where the incident took place. There are signs there like Black Lives Matter, Justice for George Floyd, and of course, "I can't breathe." Just 2.5 miles east, the scene has been notably more tense in Minneapolis. Protesters have been facing off with police outside of the city police department's 3rd precinct house. According to a reporter from our local affiliate, police started to use tear gas and flashbang explosions after people in the crowd started throwing stuff at police officers on the scene. I think we've got a live shot of these. Yes, this is a live shot of these protests as they continue right now in Minneapolis. The demonstrations, I need to tell you, do appear to have gotten larger over the course of tonight. These folks aren't going anywhere. All of this, of course, follows really dramatic scenes of unrest just last night. Windows smashed at police headquarters in Minneapolis. A line of officers in riot gear fired tear gas and ultimately rubber bullets into the protesting crowds. Pictures like this one started to emerge of people dousing themselves with milk after being exposed to the tear gas. The protests that we saw yesterday and are watching unfold again tonight are, of course, a reaction to the horrifying death of George Floyd, including, importantly, the video showing what happened in the final moments of his life. The incident was captured by a bystander's cell phone. In the video, Mr. Floyd is seen handcuffed and pinned to the ground. He is not armed. An officer is seen pressing his knee into Mr. Floyd's.
Wasn't a drug deal gone bad, it was a bad check. Once handcuffed, Floyd sits on the sidewalk. Moments later, he's escorted away, hands behind his back. The end of the video, it's unclear what happens. Maybe you tell better than I. But he appears to fall on the ground as they walk him toward the squad car. Watch. Right now. You see him go down? Now, I don't know if he hit his head or whatever there on the side of the vehicle. I don't know if he fell or he was pushed to the ground. The officers then have him back on his feet, and it's not clear at what point he was back on the ground again, as we see in the infamous video. What happened then and in the moments after? Video's all we have right now. They're the ones with the body cameras on. This is why they wear them. So until we get it, we have to work the story and get eyewitnesses, and we have one. Donald Williams. He says he was there calling on police to let Floyd up and watched as he was taken away in the ambulance. That is our witness. You just saw it. This is him. This is our witness. So this is our proof that he was there, okay? He's here for his first TV interview. And Mr. Williams, I know that this is not a discussion that is easy for you to have. I know you don't feel completely safe having it. And I thank you for taking the opportunity to do it with us tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So please, from what we saw there, how did you come upon the scene and what was your initial take on what was happening?
Yeah, it's a lot for me to take in, but it was a really little average day to the corner store. Honestly, I was just really going to get something to drink from the store. I'm in the neighborhood, and I chose a Cub to go to. And once I approached the store, I seen 3 squad cars outside the store. I didn't really think too much of it. I live in the city. I'm from the city.
Right.
Things happen in the city. A lot of, different things that happen, and the police got to do their job to protect everybody, and, whatnot. That's what was going through my mind. So I was like, another day. So as I was getting out the car, I was just hearing a lot of noise and different motions of voices and at different tones, and when I was about to walk in the store, like, my spirit just, like, kind of stopped me. It was like, maybe you shouldn't walk in the store. Maybe you should actually go over there and see what's going on. Because I usually just mind my business, unless I don't need to, And
what did you see?
As I was walking over there, I seen a couple of people standing there first. I seen the squad car, and I seen one Asian officer Tao. and I heard people vocally speaking to an individual about, maybe you should, you cooperate and you're okay now, maybe they're gonna be able to let you up, and then I started hearing as I was walking, another guy talking about he couldn't breathe and something about my stomach. So I've been working with the Minneapolis Police Department through Peachy Luce's, the clubs, for the last 10 years. So once I walked up and then doing personal security, I just sat there and observed first to see what was going on, to see if it was, what was going on, because I didn't know. And first thing I noticed was, I didn't know his name was at the time, but I think his name is Gray Floyd, George Floyd. George Floyd, and he was actually, panting for his life, begging for, his forgiveness. Like, I'm pretty much saying he's sorry, he's gonna do the right things, he want to get up, his stomach's hurting, he can't breathe, his nose is hurting, and once I realized how the officer was on him, everything that he was describing to me sounded like a...
How was the officer on him?
He had his knee, across his neck, so, and I'm not talking across the back of his neck, I'm saying across the blood part of his neck from here to here. So his knee wasn't from here to here, which is your spinal part. His knee was from here to here, which is your arteries and your blood choke, your veins and things like that, the things that cut your circulation off from your neck and your brain to your body part.
For how long do you think it was like that?
I got there at least 8 to 10 minutes because another witness walked up a little bit after me, and at this time I'm, you can hear my voice in the video explaining to this officer what he's doing, what he's capable of, and what they could not be doing at the moment.
Did anybody explain to you, or did anything make sense to you about why were they just sitting there with this guy with his knee on his neck and the officers around? Like, why did it take so long?
Well, see, like I said, I didn't know what was actually going on. So if you hear in the video, I actually asked him, I said, what's going on, officer? This is when I finally approached, because the people said his blood coming out of his nose, and I'm noticing it now. At the point, his eyes is turning a different color, and he's talking about his belly hurts, which is pretty much your last bowel movement in your life. And so that's when I started, pleading with the officers, and nobody else really, there's only 2 or 3 other people that really spoke up, about it. Me, another guy, and a lady, off-duty fire department.
Did they give you any explanation as to why they were keeping him there and why it was taking so long?
They said he was resisting arrest, and when he told me he was resisting arrest, I said, officer, he's not resisting arrest. You have your knee on him, and you have handcuffs on him. He is detained at this moment. Officer Tower proceeded to say, well, this is what drugs do to you. And, that's not what drugs do to you. Drugs don't get you killed. By cops.
Either way, they seem to have him well in control. And
correct.
Did you make any sense of why they didn't just pick him up and put him in the car and arrest him, which is what the job was?
Right. I didn't make no sense of it. Like I said, I work with a lot of cops in Minneapolis. A lot of
they executed the guy
for the last 10 years on the Greg Nelson. Like, me as a little
public
guy,
execution.
I was renting a door at Peachy Luce's. I'm able to secure and control someone, at 5'6", that's 6'10", 6'20", if you're using the right technique. And they technically was not using professional technique. They was using
nobody is trained to put their knee on somebody's throat as a suppression technique. It's not part of a martial arts. It's not even allowed. Forget about fair fighting, but this is not what cops are supposed to do, and obviously we know that too well now. But the part that makes the least sense, did any of the cops, did you hear them talking to each other about why they couldn't just move him and get him out of the situation?
Bro, they wanted to kill that man, bro. Like, I'm being 100, bro. They didn't speak. They didn't say nothing. The views in his eyes, bro. The man that had his knee on his chest, bro. He knew what he was doing. His shimmies in my man's neck, bro. He knew what he was doing. It's just like having a jiu-jitsu choke. If I'm here, I'm shimmying, boom, my choke's on there. I told him it was a blood choke. He knew it was a blood choke. He looked at me when I said it. He put his head down. He did not make any more gestures. Did not say any other thing. And the 2 other cowards that was on the other side of the car, I didn't know nothing about. I didn't know about it until I got videos in my social media and things like that. So they was intent to smother my man and kill my man. And I seen it. I seen it in his eyes. I seen it in his demeanor. And I seen it in their movement. And Officer Tao didn't he didn't partake in it, but he had control of what was going on the other side of that car for me not to see what was going on. Because the people that know me personally know how I am. And I'm very good. I'm a controlled athlete. I'm a controlled person. You know, I have different levels to who I am. And I show my controlness out there in front of the world. I got letters, notes from multiple people that know me from growing up in the city that said I was the most controlled they ever seen in my life. As I've seen another man that looked like me, that feels like me, that got the same complexion as me, lose his life to another man that had no senseless. He had no feeling. He had no remorse. He had shit in him. He had no feeling. I don't even think he had a heart at that moment. And he's going to feel that the rest of his life. Just like I want to hear my man say this. I can't breathe. I want my mama. And I'm coming to find out that this man who died 2 years of the day that his mom died, I'm a mama's boy, bro. Like, that shit hurts me deep down inside, bro. And, like, something needs to be done. Or something needs to be done.
I know this is hard for you, especially having been there, and that you wanted to help, and that you were afraid this was going to happen. And I know the police tried to get you out of there, and supposedly there is video of you showing restraint and just pushing hands away from you, but not engaging with the officer. And I know that's not easy in a situation like that.
It's not, man. Like I said, I'm a trained athlete, bro. I put my hands up because I didn't know what he was going to do next. Like, he doesn't understand I have multiple limbs. I could have did whatever I wanted to him, but I have to go to my own kids. I got a family. Like you know, so much emotions running into my. Yeah, I was chosen for this. I don't even know why I was there, but shit, I guess I was chosen for this shit, bro. Like.
Listen, these situations, as you said, growing up where you are, you've seen a lot of this. You've seen a lot of ugly situations and a lot of things that don't make sense. And hopefully, the only hope we can have here is that this is one too many, and that this gets the attention of justice that it deserves. I know there's been a lot of frustration in that city, and I know this is hard for you. I appreciate you telling the story. I appreciate you sharing your emotion. I'll check in with you right after the show and see how your head and your heart are. All right?
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing, man. I just want to say something to my mom, my family, my dad, my parents for making me who I am, give me the energy to do that. My teachers, my coaches, like my support system in general, the wrestling world, the MMA world, bro. Like, we need to make a change right here. We make it happen. As a wrestling community, we a family. As a mixed martial arts community, we a family. As a black community, as America, we a family. We got to make a change, bro. We all got to make a change.
You know what? You're right. I'm wrong. This is a community discussion. You're living it there. You're living the reality. You're a set of eyes on the situation. You saw the duration. Do me a favor. If it's not too painful for you, just stay with me a few more minutes, all right? Let me bring in the mayor, Jacob Fry, all right? Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us. Listen, I just respect him so much for relaying what he had to watch. You and I can only imagine what it's like to see something that, let alone the identification that someone like Mr. Williams has. There but for the grace go I. That is not a message you want in your African-American community. As you look at the circumstances right now, how are you seeing the due process of justice unfold here?
Well, we need to have honesty right now, and we need to have action. I mean, that video that was just referenced was hard. I mean, for 5 straight minutes, a white officer on our police department pressed his knee into the neck of a black man who was handcuffed, who was no threat, and was articulating very clearly how he was impacted, how his physical health was being damaged, and how he couldn't breathe. This is not an instance of 1 or 2 seconds where you're forced to make a split decision.
Right.
This is like 5 minutes. It's 300 seconds, and in any one of those seconds, he could.
In other words, it wasn't a quick death. It was a slow, unmerciful death. Kind of like waterboarding. If you was sitting there watching somebody be waterboarded, and they was steadily pouring water upside down in their mouth and in their nose for 5 to 8 minutes solid with a water hose. You know what you just got through seeing. You just got through seeing an individual drown right in front of you. A public execution is what that we just got through seeing by these individuals. They need to go to jail. They need to be tried as killers, murderers. Period. This is all I got to say to my viewers because it's upset me. It's made me sick. My emotions right now are going out the roof by seeing something like this and seeing that the town has only fired them and they hadn't pressed charges against them. It's heartbreaking. Good luck to all of us. From the Windmill Ministries in Shalom.